My business is called TreeTimes, and I delight in weaving connections between people and nature in various different ways, some of which are featured here. All the work that I do aims to be low impact, easy on tools, and proven repeatable ways of how people can meet their nature connection requirements at home, wherever they are, with ease. I tried to connect more with the land by studying. I studied ecology. I've got an MA in ecology and nature conservation planning, but there was a gap there that didn't suit me. And when I came to the UK, I travelled around to learn green woodworking and hazel hurdle making and coppicing, and that was when it really got me. I knew that that was the way for me to come really close to the land and to the plants. So I learned to make, not quite like that, more elaborate panels of wattle hurdles. I came across things like oak swirl basket making. So these are riven oak strips, which is a very Cumbrian tradition, and I lugged around lots of beautiful pieces of tree that I often felled, but the rootstock would be kept alive and re-sprout, so the actual plant wasn't destroyed, just the top parts were harvested. And this is called coppicing. How I first got into these crafts, I think it is because I grew up in an area, in a very rural area in Germany, with a lot of timber framing, and I remember the fence posts being these crooked posts riven from oak. Similar to these stakes, each fence post was individual, and I remember the old beams in the houses, and there was a lot of things that needed harvesting, a lot of apples and plums and things. So I think growing up in this area that used to be self-sufficient has definitely given me an early flavour. The houses, the timber framed houses, were usually filled with wattle and daub, very similar to this hazel hurdle. So there was another inspiration, seeing those laths that filled in the timber frame compartments. What is it that I love about it? I just love nature's abundance and manifoldness, and the ingenuity that different plants and different parts of plants have found ways to come up with strategies. There's so many functional solutions, and if you use the different parts, for instance, if you use the bark, that's got a very different kind of strength than using the core wood. This big ladle, for instance, was carved from a curved piece of wood in the way it was grown, and it's incredibly strong because it uses the curve. I just love seeing so much beauty and so much functioning and ingenuity and strategies. And there's a great simplicity about making items that serve essential everyday functions in a very beautiful way. There's also for me a sense of empowerment to be able to have few tools and not need electricity and just go out, be somewhere and do it, and come back with a spoon, a basket, or even a rocking chair. That would take several days, of course. There's also a big sense of connection with the plants that I love. When I see where they grow, I remember the places they grow, whether it's rocky or swampy. I remember the weather on the day, the sunlight, the cold patches. There's a great sense of connection with nature that I get when I harvest materials, and I love the way that seems to transfer to people, even if they haven't harvested themselves. So there's so many memories. It's like a photo album or something almost. When the finished item is there, I still remember all about it. There's also usually animals around that show themselves. There's the sense of moisture, of wind. So the whole world is close to me, and I'm working alongside it, and I really love that about it. It's very different. The opposite would be if you get a box sent by post with band-sawn squares of wood that have a spoon design outlined already, and you're meant to make a spoon from that. That's the total opposite for me. It just doesn't call me at all. Whereas this, I really love to take a piece and see what's in there and then think about what it could be. This could be a coat hook, this could be a part of a spoon, and then cleaving those pieces with an axe and a mallet is incredibly exciting. And hearing the noises, there's rustling of leafy plants, there's the kind of crack sound when you open a piece of wood, there's the axing sounds, there's just so many sounds and so many smells and so many different textures to feel, that it's a very sensory rich environment that human beings are perfectly set up to enjoy. What are some of the products that can be made with coppice crafts and woven plant aspects? There's a wide variety really, from fencing posts to bean poles for the garden to pea sticks. The coppice industry was very sought after. These days wattle hurdles get used in gardens and as attractive solutions to hide away unsightly containers. There's obviously the wide world of basket making. There can even be cradles for children. There's trucks for the garden. There's small and big containers. In some cultures they even managed to make woven containers that were tightly enough woven that they could carry water in them. That's not in our area though. And it even goes as far as you can be out in the woods and create beautiful chairs. There was a really big chair industry, especially in the Chiltern area, but in other areas too. So all these things and many more can be made from greenwood crafts. The wide world of carving small trees, scoops for the grain, spoons, big bowls, small bowls, many items that would have been needed in daily life and are still really adding and enriching to people's life these days if they have them in their house. So my business has got 3 strands at the moment. I teach greenwood crafts and fibre weaving. That's the first one. With greenwood crafts we use things taken from the hedgerows and the woodlands. It stems from the coppicing industry, and there's quite a difference between working with sawn timber in a dry workshop with dust and big machines to working with the natural curves of woods and the properties that fibres and trees have inherently with only hand tools. Because you can take the hand tools with you wherever you are, and you can do it on a really small scale even if you go out for a walk. And there's a beauty about doing these old crafts in nature while the wind is rustling in the trees and the birds are singing. It's just very, very peaceful and beautiful to do this. So I particularly love working with the natural quirks of a tree that tell the story of its life basically. And there's so many different parts of the wood that can be used for different things. So for instance, this is a thumbstick. But you can also use the fork in the branch to make a little bird. And there's the bark of the tree, in this case willow bark, that can be used for weaving baskets. And then there is of course the thin twigs of willow, especially dogwood, that can be used for a variety of basket making. The second strand of my business is to enable for people to play in and with nature and natural materials. To do this, I run forest school sessions for schools, I run wildwood birthday parties, and I also teach nature play games with family groups for communities. And a lot of my work is also to craft simple little things like this duck that will float on the water with children. It's made from reed maize or cattail, as the plant is also known, or to whittle simple little things that have a little playful aspect to them, often colourful. I absolutely love the playful aspect of my work. There is so much curiosity, there is so much stimulation and inspiration coming from nature, and I think the sources that I draw on go way back. This is Plupp, which is a Swedish little person living out in the fells, and it's the first picture book that I remember as a child. And you can see those little bark baskets, things made from antlers, little woodenware, little wooden spoons, and a house made of branches, and I'm not quite sure what it's covered with. So Plupp has been a companion for me ever since. And then I discovered Pippi Longstocking, and she just dares experiment. I love the empowering aspect when you show people with a few simple tools what they can do, and then they just start going for the ideas that are in their mind, and amazing products come out. I love that when I teach people. Another little fella from my childhood that's inspired me, I think, is Emil or Michael, another Swedish child, and it's a lot of the carving work that I do is based on Swedish carving techniques, and this little boy lived on a Swedish farm, and a lot of the book features things that are simple things that are made from wood that they needed to use in everyday life, and usually people used to make it themselves. That was not just in Sweden the case, that was the case everywhere. You know, you go all over Europe and all over the countries, you'll find some kind of woodworking and basket making tradition that stemmed from necessity. We've got two plants here that are really good for willow, not for willow weaving, for wreath making. One plant is the hazel. Look at these lovely big leaves. It's got really long shots that aren't branching, so we need to go back to a place where they're not branching anymore. And we need to do this when the leaves are down, so we're going to come back soon when the leaves are down to cut them. But I did want to show them. They're slightly furry, really firm leaves. So the hazelnut shots are really, the shoots, sorry, not the shots, the shoots are really good for using in wreaths. And another plant that is excellent is dogwood, the red dogwood that is. So you can see that the stems have got, of the branches have got an amazing red lacquer colour. Really stunning when they get the yellow leaves in autumn. So this plant I would cut with secateurs, and again we'll have to do it when the leaves are down, so in about a month or so. So how does it help us when we develop these crafts to connect more to each other and the natural world? There is really many aspects to that, many dimensions. Obviously the coppicing craft and basket making are very much from this area and other areas in Europe. So there's a historical and cultural aspect, a connection to the people that were before us in these lands, as well as the connection to nature. So we get a sense of belonging by understanding more where we come from. And usually just learning about it is not the same as having tried it out ourselves. It's a much deeper sense of connection. Apart from the historical cultural aspect, there is an ecological aspect where the coppice industry and using low impact crafts, developing low impact crafts again and integrating them more in our everyday life means that the many biodiverse habitats that get created through this industry can expand, and more old overstood copies, for instance, can be brought back into rotation, which creates a quite unique mosaic habitat, because one part of the coppice gets cut every year, so there is a mosaic of different stages of the woodland regrowing within one area, which leads to very specific plants and insects that like to frequent those different stages. So it's a very small scale, structure rich and ecologically important. Economically, many small self-employments attached to it, so it delves into and feeds into a more regional economy with low impact in the sense of low mileage. The communal aspect of crafting is huge, of course. when we craft together, whether that's in smaller groups or we invite people round in our houses, or even meeting on Zoom for craft afternoons like the one happening on Friday, there is a really big social aspect, sitting together and leisurely doing your thing whilst you craft something and exchange communication. The mental health and well-being aspect that stems from crafting is really not to be underestimated. So the flow state that I was referring to, when people really get into something and get absorbed, really helps the human system recover and regenerate. Crafts, especially crafts with and in nature, just lead us to a deeply satisfying journey of connection to ourselves as we grapple with what we want to express, to often others, and to nature and the land. And this, I'm convinced, answers some irrepressible needs for our well-being. And we cultivate learning that is essential for our cultural survival, to create societies that are actually built on mutual survival and mutual thriving. So thriving being way more than survival, not just the humans thriving because they enjoy doing crafts, but certain landscapes, plants, habitats thriving too. This is a little model to explain how crafts and relating to the landscape in as many ways as is possible, or certainly having some strong ones, can make a person be more secure in life. So many people relate through food, obviously. Let's take these mushrooms for medicinal plants. They can also be food plants, obviously. Some people have a big connection to soil or to rock or to climbing or to sports. Some people love bird watching. So whenever you do something a lot with certain species or certain beings, then there is the concept of the ropes of connection. Connection basically means being tied to or fastened to something. So there's a mutual bond that gets established. If we harvest food from our garden, we have a very different connection to it than if we just buy it in the supermarket. And crafts, this basket and this spoon is the symbol for crafts. Crafts is a connection that is really strong for me, so I've chosen a thicker rope here because I do it a lot. I harvest many different plants and I have a strong connection to those plants. And you can imagine, same as with a tent, if a tent is guyed off in many directions, in multiple dimensions, then the tent will withstand any winds and storms so much better. And really the same goes for humans. Our nervous system is made to respond to connection by thriving. So if we manage to connect ourselves with the natural world in multiple dimensions, that's always going to be a win-win for both sides. Why I love teaching what I do? I just really love handling nature, being in nature. I just love making things, and I think it is just normal to want to pass on the bounty and to pass on and share what one loves. That certainly goes for me.